Good morning and welcome back to Darpan. Today morning, it's very beautiful and I'm for the first time sitting in office to conduct this beautiful Darpan and it's amazing morning today. Thank you for the gift of your divine presence and today I will be continuing our conversation what we started last time, that is the execution levers for any organization. Now, this is one of the most beautiful and most important elements of anybody today, anyone. Strategies and cultures are two important elements that drive execution. So, like I said some time back, culture is the vehicle of strategy. That means if you have a very broken culture, no matter what strategy you put in, it's not going to fly. If you have a sorted culture, broken strategy, no execution will work. Great culture, sorted strategy, but poor execution. Again, you will not reach anywhere. So, in today's world, first 2 points, that is culture and strategy, are given elements, but 99% of success is directly proportional to the superb execution that you do on the ground in the environment which is disruptive, which has become a new operating system for you, and how you function it, how you work on it is something which will define how you really are able to create a magnificent impact on the ground. Let's begin our discussion today. So, last time, if you remember, we had started our conversation about discussing, actually, last to last time, we started this framework of execution. And in this framework of execution, we looked at two big elements, that is, why, and the second big element being how. Now, why defines all the possible hows in the world. If your why is sorted, how is sorted? If your why is taken care of, how is also taken care of? But how needs to be designed in a very proper fashion. And that how stands on six levers, as I discussed last time. Now, what are the six levers? If you remember it clearly, the six levers were your leadership, first one. Second one being your resources. Third being processes. Fourth being, and it's a new addition, being the artificial intelligence, the AI. The fifth being the speed of the resources, the velocity, and the policy framework and the governance. Now, these six levers together decide and design everything that we do. We were able to complete only two levers last time. That is, leader. We spoke about velocity, of course. Apart from velocity, which is a calibration lever, we spoke about leadership and we spoke about resources. Today, I will complete the balanced three levers and we'll see all of it together as a joint framework. So let's first do a small 5 minute recap of what we discussed last time so that you all can come in the flow. And then from there, we will start our today's discussion. So last time we discussed about a proper model of execution. The first being the part one being the complete execution model, which is head, heart, and purpose. That is the why of the model. The part two being the how of the model. That is leadership, resources, processes, AI, policies, and the velocity or the speed. Now, intellectual intellectual quotient present in the first part of the model, that is the head of it, the emotional quotient present in the first part of the model, that is the heart of the organization, and the most important, the spirit, which is the purpose of the organization, is the spiritual quotient of the part one. Now, why the execution has to be designed around all the three layers? Because if you do not, then what happens is then you're just creating an execution machine without any deeper emotional and spiritual connect. Now, what that happens is this exhausts the machine. The only why then remains is valuation numbers, revenue numbers, profit numbers, money that is coming in, money that is going out, and then the whole system becomes it at one point of time extremely greedy, and it just sits on a single point, and that is what is in for me. Now, therefore, head, heart, and purpose is the philosophy layer, but philosophy without a proper machinery is just a sermon. And therefore, the part two becomes extremely important where we build the machinery, that is, leadership, resources, processes, AI, policies, and speed. When all of them come together, that completes the first part of it, and that is the machinery. And if you have this machinery, you will do extremely well, extremely well. But if you do not have the support of the philosophy, this machinery becomes a treadmill, and therefore, together, both are extremely important. So, if I have to make one line for it, philosophy without machinery is a sermon, but machinery without philosophy is a treadmill, and therefore, we can't ignore one for the other. So, as you all know, now many of you have been connected with me for almost some even as long as 10 to 12 years. You understand that I'm very strong on philosophy, but at the same time, we're extremely strong on machinery. We understand it extremely well. A great philosophy, bad machinery is failure. A great machinery, bad philosophy is exhaustion. You will lose your steam. You will not want to do many things. You will just pull out, and you will start finding happiness somewhere else, and the machinery that you built falls flat. People become extremely toxic, environment becomes toxic, political, we are blaming each other, we are not, even if we are doing well, we are not satisfied, we are not fulfilled. And therefore, for an organization to last, for legacies, for generations altogether, the only thing is you will have to balance the both, and therefore you must have a great philosophy backed by a strong machinery. So, what are the six levers? We discussed it last time. Again, I'm repeating leadership. It is, what does it do? It is a signal that sets the tempo and the direction. It's a signal that sets the tempo and the direction. Resources. What does it do? It is the capital, it is the people. And one important thing we discussed last time, it is the attention that is deployed with intent. The most, I would say, scarcest quantity available in the world today is the attention, the focus. The attention that is deployed with intent are the resource, is the most important resource today. So therefore, capital, people, and time, that is the attention that is deployed with intent, is the resource. Third, processes. The repeatable system that turns this intent into an output, the processes, which we'll discuss today. Extremely important lever, AI, the artificial intelligence. The AI as a lever is a new multiplier. It's a multiplier that compresses the cycle time and helps you achieve things if done well, if not used like a noise, if not falling in trap of it. I will tell you the traps of AI this time today when I'm discussing with you. The fifth lever is the policies, the rules that are either accelerate or sometimes strangle you. So, what are those rules? What are those policies that you should follow? You should let go. You should transform. You should relook at. So, rules and policies that have to be seen all the time. What are those non negotiable, everlasting, forever? What must be looked at every year? So, policies or the governance guardrails. And the last but not the least, it's a very special lever. It defines the other five, and that's the velocity, the speed. The calibration that aligns all the five levers of the execution model so that you are able to do things in the right way. Now, if I have to just look at speed as a calibration tool, speed as a setting of your organizational machinery and not as a virtue, what you will understand is your business model actually demands a specific metabolic rate. Now, other five levers must be coherent with it. That metabolism, that metabolic rate has to be well defined. And therefore, you will be able to categorize organizations as of today, as of now, into only three categories. One, either you are a high velocity organization, mid velocity organization, or deliberate velocity organization. What is a high velocity organization? Like marketplaces, like QSR, like commodity volume. These are high velocity organizations. Mid velocity organizations like B2B SaaS companies, the services company, the mid complexity company. Deliberate velocity organizations are those luxury, advisory, deep R&D companies. Companies like us, Transgression, we are deliberate velocity. We can't be high velocity. A retail chain, high velocity. A franchise network, high velocity. A trading company, high velocity. Mid velocity are like automobile companies, the manufacturing firms, where the decision making can be in a cadence, a weekly cadence. In high velocity company, decision making has to be extremely fast. In deliberate velocity, decisions can take time. But on purpose, they need to take time, but you decide and then you commit to it. So that's the setting that we're talking about. We spoke about leadership. Leadership is the human signal that sets the tempo. We discussed about this. Leadership is the human signal that sets the tempo, the standard, and the willingness to decide. No org structure, no org chart authority. Visible behavior under pressure is leadership. What does bad leadership look like? Decisions are delayed for consensus that never arrives. Bad leadership. Leadership leaders model being busy instead of modeling depth. Standards drop quietly. There is no because whatever you tolerate becomes a standard. If you tolerate late coming, standard. If you tolerate timekeeping, it becomes a standard. Look at army. Indian army is a team example of leadership. Why? Because there is a tolerance limit decided, and that's become a culture. And that's why army is so beautiful. Is because of its leadership tolerance. Um, because team copies the leader's avoidance and not their words. It's a very important point to understand. Okay, so what are the operating principles of leadership? Decision velocity has to be based on the organization model. Public ownership. Leaders own outcomes in front of the team. Failure is named, absorbed, addressed, never deflected. Standard is what you tolerate. Presence over performance. You must be present. Your energy is what I need, not your words. Your energy is what I need. Your presence is what I need. Your calmness is what I need. Your sthirta is what I need. I can be bad, you can't be. I can be talking too much, you can't be. I can react, you cannot. That's an employee saying, that's a child saying. If you're in a leadership position, the first thing that I expect from you is calmness. First thing I expect from you is firmness. First thing I expect from you is no anger. I don't want you to get carried away by emotions. You have to have a high tolerance for so many things. Because if you react, system falls. But if you pause, perceive, correct, proceed correctly, it happens. That's a leader. Leader is not about a position. Leader is not about a chair. Leader is not about title that you get. Leader is not about a head position that you get. Leader is about one who doesn't need the title, one who doesn't want a position, one who doesn't consider sitting in a chair is important, one who can walk past the corridor of an organization and his presence spreads of energy of calmness. He is the Buddha. He is not the uncalm spirit. He is the great absorber of energy, of any negativity, and spread throws it out like a positive environment. That's the leader. So leader has a very different power of presence. He should know how to calibrate. He should know exactly what velocity organization is moving in. He should know when to go to fast, when to go to slow, when to go and design the team, design the people accordingly. Fast leaders are the ones who can take decisions in hours, tolerate incomplete information quite a lot, model speed visibly. This is a right leader for a high velocity organization. Right leader for a mid velocity organization, they can take decision in days. Balance speed with sound judgment. Models with clarity. Deliberate organization leaders, decisive in weeks, no problem. Maybe months, no problem. Weighs deeply but commits fully. Models craft. A leader calibrated for a wrong velocity exhausts the team and starves the market. Leaders should know exactly what needs to be done at what time and what I have to let go, what I have to keep, what I have to move on. Leaders know how to tolerate. Leaders know has a social skill. They know what is the tolerance limit of my people, and therefore they know how to even transfuse information to them. What to say, what not to say at what time, how much to say, how much not to say at what time, how to communicate. Simple philosophy for a leader is say, speak what is necessary, what is kind, and what is right. Say what is right, what is necessary, and what is kind. Because if it is not kind, it doesn't stay. It's a natural human being behavior, it doesn't stay. So if you think it is can't be kind, don't speak. Absorb and stay with it. Leadership, very important part of a organization's growth. Your organizations can fall for years altogether, no problem. Great leader will let it move up. It will eventually go up because nature is watching. They know exactly, he knows exactly what to be done at what time. Okay. So that is the important part of the leader. Then came the resources, which we spoke about: capital, people, and attention. Resources are not what you have. Important point. Resources are what you deploy. Capital, talent, rarest of all, the leadership's attention is a resource. Every resource is a bet placed somewhere, which means I'm starving somewhere else. So, what should I starve? Which I don't want to focus on. It's okay. Starve it. It's all right. Let it go. You made some commitments, you spent money on it. No problem. Let it go. Money can come back, attention cannot. So, you took a wrong decision, you made a wrong judgment. No problem. Let it be. Put your focus in the right place right now. Correct every action, correct every thought. It will happen. Time will come, old losses will also be recovered. So no problem. Think over it, do it right, and focus. That is resources. So operating principles here: concentrate, don't distribute. Best people on biggest problems. Attention is the scarcest currency. Leadership has five things it can hold in active focus. Choose them wisely, defend them strongly, and starve what you're killing anyway. Every legacy line that gets resources slows the next bet. Pull funding deliberately, not accidentally. Pull it. And funding can be of money, capital, and time. Pull it. That's the resources. You should calibrate to velocity because if you have a high speed organization, hire fast, redeploy faster, volume hires for execution roles, for execution speed. That is a high velocity organization. Mid velocity, hire deliberately for skill, for culture, mixed seniority bench. It's okay, it'll work. For deliberate velocity, the craft, hire for craft. Fewer, deeper, longer tenured operators. Hire slow, it's okay, but because the mistake will be much expensive, hire correct, hire correctly. That is the resources. Now, today I'm going to go to the third lever, and that is the processes. Now, I'm going to speak about processes slowly and steadily. Be with me. As transorganization, we are an advocate of process, leadership process. We are actually designed our organization to, to deliver this message to the world that if you do not have the philosophical strength and if you don't have an implementable, repeatable systems and processes, every philosophy will fall. Processes will not let you fall for longer time. But at the same time, we also say people are extremely important. So great process, bad people doesn't work. So therefore, it's a balance of everything. Today, we're going to discuss about the three balance levers, and first one being an important lever called as a process. Now, what is a process? Process is a repeatable system. It's not a bureaucracy. It's not a bureaucracy. So processes are how intent becomes an output. How intent becomes a output repeatedly, consistently, without the founder in the room or top leadership in the room. So I'll repeat this sentence again. Processes are how intent becomes an output. Important point, please understand. It's not an input becoming an output. It's the intent becoming an output. Repeatedly, consistently, without founder in the room, without leader in the room. That is a process. Done well, they scale clarity. Done well, they will scale clarity. Done badly, they become company's slowest organ. It becomes a bureaucracy. So I will write it for you, so don't worry. Just focus on what I said. So it's intent becoming an output repeatedly, consistently, without founder in the room or leader in the room. Done well, they scale clarity. Done badly, they become company's slowest organ. What does bad look like in a process? Processes invented to recover from a single bad incident, bad. More steps than the work requires, it is disguised as governance, bad. Documents exist, no one reads them, no one updates them, bad. Whoever wrote the process owns it forever, bad. So you have to understand this is all learning of past 12 years. There was a time I used to say, write the essays. I still agree to it. But as the speed of the world increased, that that statement was true at that time, not true today. You have to start designing critical paths and design processes for critical paths, not for everything, not required. So that you can fast implement, go on the ground, correct it, come back, recheck it. Repeatable systems, not bureaucracy. What happens is long processes become bureaucracy. From the time we started 12 years back, Gen millennial was a young generation, which was a part of the workforce. Some of us are part of that millennial generation also. Then came a time Gen Z, like today, is becoming part of the young generation, young crowd. Gen Alpha is coming. They're not going to read your documents. And when Gen Beta comes, I don't know what will happen. So Gen Alpha is about to enter the workforce now in next 3 to 5 years. Are you ready for it? Ask that question. So generations pass, old rules cannot hold true now. So processes are repeatable systems, not bureaucracy. Let me write it for you so that it becomes easier for you to understand. Okay. So starting the work with the processes. Process. It's a repeatable system and not a bureaucracy. Okay, so now that is a first point. The second point to understand here is that process happened to it. So understand here that processes are intent converting to output. Intent converting to output. I'm just writing the important points for you. It's repeatedly founder not in the room, etc., etc. You understand that well inside your head. They're done well, they scale clarity. Done badly, they become company's lowest organ. So done well, they become clarity. Done bad, lowest organ. Okay, so that's the process for you. So first important point to understand is okay, now what are the operating principles of the process? How this lever should function regardless of your stage in the company, in the industry, what session, what part you're part of, what is the operating model, what is the operating rules, what are the operating principles? First operating principle, minimum viable process. Process should be the smallest thing that produces consistent quality. Minimum viable process. I'm going to write it so that you don't forget later. So operating principles. First, minimum viable process. That means what do we do? We only process should be the smallest thing that produces the consistent quality. That means what? Add steps only when something breaks. Don't try to add steps all the time. Add steps only when something breaks, otherwise, don't. So, minimum viable process, the first operating principle. Second operating principle is document the critical path. Map the work that moves the outcomes. Document the critical path. So, document the critical path. What is the critical path? Write that moves the outcomes. Not everything is. Whatever moves the outcome, write only that. So, for what does that mean? That means skip whatever is not moving the outcome. If a process touches the customer or revenue, it gets written down. If process touches the cost centers, the marker points of the organization, write it down. So identify those critical customer touch points, those critical moments of truth, aha moments in the process which can create those wow factors. Write it down. So document the critical path. Don't document everything else. Next, design for removal. That means every process should have a sunset clause. If it is not reviewed annually, it is not a process, it's archaeology. So design every process for for removal. Design every process for removal. Make process, not archaeology. Fourth operating principle. Fourth operating principle is sorry. Fourth operating principle is process density should match the stakes. That means high cost mistakes deserve heavy process, low cost mistakes deserve speed. So wherever you think a mistake can be a very costly affair, heavy process. Wherever think tolerance can be fine, do not put a process around it. It will unnecessarily choke it, choke that point. So, four important principles: minimum viable process. Second, document the critical path. Third, design for removal. Fourth, process density should match the stakes. Let me write the fourth part for you. Process density should match the stakes. High cost points, heavy process. Low cost, design for speed. So these are the operating principles of the process lever. Now, what does that mean? That means whenever I'm designing a process, I should understand that what are the things that I should never forget. I should design for the critical path, extremely important. So, how many critical paths exist? Not many. 20% of the critical paths decide the 80% of the organization success. Write process only for those critical paths. There's no need to write for everything else. You should know but all. What is all? But design for only the critical path. That's the art of process writing. So, how do you calibrate a process for different kinds of organizations? So, what are the three kinds of organizations? High velocity, mid velocity, deliberate. So in high velocity, what comes first? Volume, speed first. Mid velocity, it's a balanced. Deliberate velocity, craft, depth first. So for high velocity organization, you should have lean playbooks, fast onboarding, high tolerance for in-flight changes. So if you have lean playbooks, fast onboarding, high tolerance for in-flight changes, you will have a great process run. It needs a good system. Hands off the wheel has to be very, very fast. So it needs a very good system. So therefore, high velocity organizations should have lean playbooks and faster onboarding and high tolerance for in-flight changes. So let me write for you. So what are the high velocity organization points? One, lean playbook. Two, you should be able to do fast onboarding of resources, people, etc. Fast onboarding. And third point was you should have high tolerance for in-flight changes. That's the high velocity. When it comes to medium velocity, mid velocity means documented but flexible, reviewed quarterly maybe, and owners are clearly named. Owners are clearly named. In the high velocity, everybody is the owner because we have to move fast. In mid velocity, owners are clearly named in a document which is flexible but it is reviewed quarterly. Mid velocity, documented but flexible. Owners named clearly. You can review quarterly if you want. What happens to a deliberate velocity organization? So in deliberate velocity organization, you have to be sure that you're making a rigorous process for the critical paths, multi-step, peer-reviewed, low tolerance for shortcuts. Because cost is very high for any mistake that you do there. So process density is a velocity choice. In the first one, you're less dense. In the mid one, you're a little more dense. In deliberate, you're quite densed. So density will matter on the process velocity. More process is not better, it is just heavier. So if you are a high velocity organization and you're designing for a deliberate velocity process, then you will be making it heavier than better. So we should know our velocity. Leaders should know where to calibrate, how much to design, how much not to design. That clarity has to be here because then only you will feel a very beautiful run. Otherwise, you'll become too much process heavy. So deliberate velocity, craft is important, depth is important. Therefore, it has to be rigorous, multi-stepped, peer-reviewed, low tolerance for shortcuts. So I'll write for you rigorous and low tolerance for shortcuts as an important point. So rigorous and low tolerance for shortcuts. That's the speed playbook for the for the process element. Now, very important question that has to come here. What are the questions, hard questions that you should ask yourself? And I love this first hard question. It's something that we all leaders should ask every single day. What is the hard question? If a new joinee, if a new hire joined Monday morning, could they execute the critical path by Friday? And this is one question that every leader should ask themselves. If a new joinee joins Monday, could they execute the critical path by Friday? So, hard questions. If a new hire joins Monday, can they execute the critical path by Friday? Important question to ask. Second tough question, because if you can't, that means you are confused or you don't know how to induct. You don't know how to communicate. So there can be a process broken at HR level, a process broken at process level, process broken at wherever the process is broken. If this doesn't happen, it's a question that a leader should ask himself. Now, next important question is which process exists only because of one person's preference? Regular question, but it's an important question. And usually, what happens is preference of people start designing processes which are only meant for that person and not for the organization. So, which process exists because of one person's preference has to be asked as a question. Which process exists because of the preference of one. That one person can be you also. So ask that question to yourself as well. That one person can be the leader himself, founder himself. Other team thinks it's stupid process to do, but you think it is extremely process important. Ask yourself a question: is team stupid or you stupid? So be clear that this is important or not important. So ask those hard questions to yourself. Correct, calibrate, move forward. Okay, so that is the second question. The third question I should ask is what process did I add this year? What did you remove? Because if you haven't, that means you're going into archaeological mode. Are your processes faster or slower than your competitors? Do you know which ones are the ones? So, third and fourth question are regular questions that everybody should ask. I don't think they're very critical, but they should be asked. So I'm writing it down for you. But keep your head always in place that I must have a process champion in the organization who's every time looking at it, and the first champion will be you. Because if you can't, nobody else will. So first champion has to be you, and then slowly start transferring this thought process in the heads of everybody in the team. So, third question is what process did you add this year? What did you remove? What process you added this year and which ones you removed? And the fourth question is are your processes faster or slower than your competitors? And do you know it or not? Or you're just guessing it? Are your processes faster or slower than your competitor? First of all, do you know or not? Now, once we have these three important operating levers: speed, clarity, and hard questions ask yourself, and knowing that process is designed for the critical paths and not for the outcomes, not for the not for everything. Only those paths that need to be that move the outcomes are the ones we have to decide. Then only it will be able to convert an intent into an output. Then only it will scale the clarity. Then only it will actually do what it's meant to do. Okay, so that is the first important point of today's discussion. That is the process, that is the lever. Going to the next, and I will first go to the policies and then pick up the important part of important part of new lever, that is AI. We'll discuss about that after the policies. So policy won't take much time. What is a policy? Policies are the rules that speed you up or slow you down. So be careful. They are those pre decided answers, the rules of engagement that govern what is allowed without re asking. Good policies free people to move fast. Bad policies turn the company into a permission seeking machine. For eating the glass of water, going to a washroom, I need permission, like a school. The school is meant to be a permission seeking machine because that is not what we actually want children to take their call because we think they are not matured enough to do it. But our organizations need to be careful about where to ask and where not to ask. Wherever we need to ask, through a process which will define in the critical paths, if we don't ask and move, if that clarity doesn't exist, we make wrong decisions, we make mistakes. So, policies are pre decided answers, the rules of engagement that govern what is allowed without re asking. What does bad look like in this? First is obvious bad. Every decision needs three approvals. Velocity dies. Bad. Policies written after single bad incident and never removed. Bad. Compliance without judgment and judgment without consequences. Bad. Default is no. Default should be yes, unless. For depending on the velocity of the organization, either default is no or default is yes. If for a default no organization, my default is yes, bad. If for default yes organization, my default is no, bad, because it will mismatch the velocity. So just to put it in perspective, high velocity organization will need to have a default yes, and then we calibrate. Amazon, for example, some person calls up the call center, customer is angry, I need to give him an answer. I can't say no. You say no, you die. You have to say yes, accept, go back, check whether my yes was right or not. If it is yes, good enough, make a process, move forward, make a policy, move forward. If it is bad judgment, good enough, correct it, accept this mistake, pay for it, and then correct the policy, move forward. But you need to have a default yes in the high speed organizations. What about deliberate organizations? You need to have a default no. And then go back, check, do, redo, and then because mistakes are very expensive over there. You can't have a default yes over there. It has to be default no. So policies are the rules that speed you up or slow you down. So let's write it for you. So first, let's design the box of policy. So policies are the ones, sorry, that either speed you up or slow you down. Now, when we say speed you up or slow you down, what basically it means is policies are pre-decided answers, the rules of engagement that govern what is allowed without re-asking. I'm going to just rewrite this sentence. Pre-decided answers. Policies are pre-decided answers that govern your decisions without asking. So, knowing it clearly, where to say yes, where to say no, is an important part of the policy document. And that's where the clarity will come. So, good policies will make people fast, free. Bad policies turn company into a permission seeking machine. So, as I was explaining, if I have to calibrate for velocity, for high speed organizations, you should know where to say yes, where to say no. But default is yes. It is bound by autonomy, few hard gates, fast escalation paths. So default state is yes. It is bound by autonomy, and there are few hard gates, but fast escalation paths. So writing it for you. Velocity. So high velocity. Number one. Default state is yes. Few hard gates. Few hard gates. Sorry, I can start the sharing. Few hard gates. So high velocities, default state is yes, few hard gates, and um, shorter escalation paths. And that's high velocity for you. What happens to mid velocity? Let's discuss that first. So, what happens with mid velocity? Mid velocity means it is a tiered approval structure. What do? We divide the organization into two parts, or divide the organization into layers based on the spends or risk involved. So, we have clear escalation rules. So, in a high velocity organization, you can't say we have an escalation metric. We have few escalation paths, In mid velocity organizations, you have to say we have escalation metrics. And those escalation metrics are the ones that decide and define how you actually take decisions based on the risky paths and non risky paths. So, tiered approval is the important part of the mid velocity organizations. Tiered approval. So, what is we are saying based on the critical paths, either revenue or spends or customer touch points. Define the escalation method. So I know escalation matrix. How does it function? How does it function? Here you have shorter escalation paths. You don't have to spend so much time. What happens to deliberate velocity? So deliberate velocity functions differently. Deliberate velocity, the default state is no, exactly opposite to high velocity. Default state is no. There is multi-party review system. Reversibility is the key criteria. So what is the key criteria in the high velocity? Is the speed. In the high velocity thing, speed is the key criteria. In the deliberate velocity, it's the reversibility. I won't be able to reverse. If I can't reverse, I need to be deliberate. I need to be very calm before saying yes. So default state is no. You need to have a multi-party review system, and reversibility is a key criteria. So let me write it for you. Default state is no. Reversibility is key criteria. So you should have multi-party decision system. So this is the velocity calibration. Now, what are the operating principles of policies? So four operating principles, like for everybody. As the first, policy should accelerate. It should accelerate. It should not gate. A good policy says, here is what you can do without asking. A bad policy says, here is what you must ask permission for. So it's a very different framework. It's a different way of thinking. A good policy will say, here is what you can do without asking. A bad policy will say, here is what you must ask permission for. So writing it down for you step by step. Operating principles. Number one, good policy accelerates, not, sorry, links. Going to the next one. You should know based on the velocity. You have a default yes or a default no. Deliberate cultures default to no with exceptions. Choose deliberately and match the model. So, a second operating principle is extremely important point. Now, we can have a conversation on the other policy, will take less time, as will take more time. So, what is a policy element saying? Policy is saying I should know where to say yes and where to say no. As a leader, I should know where I say. Now, an organization can have two parts also. There can be high speed parts, there can be low speed models in the same organization. Now, high speed models, you can't apply the policies of this low speed model. A low velocity model cannot be applied to a high velocity model. So, for example, in a company which is into say manufacturing. Now they've also got into giving services to other manufacturing firms as engineers, or say a builder who is into or a contractor who's into contracting. They contract on somebody else's design. Now they also have a division which does designing. Now designing is a deliberate velocity company. Contracting is a mid velocity company. A deliberate velocity company will need to have a guardrail which is very different from the guardrail of a contracting company. A deliberate velocity company will need to have a default state as no, while here the default state needs to be principled. It has to be within the guardrails of the rules defined. Now, the moment you do that and you apply default state no to this also, because the leader thinks similarly or in the same way, you will exhaust or you will kill the operating company of the contracting firm or the manufacturing, and vice versa. If you apply default state yes to a engineering company, you will die again. So therefore, default state has to be what? It has to be chosen deliberately and match the velocity model. So match the velocity for the default state of policies. What is the third important principle of a policy, operating principle? Sunset every policy. If a policy hasn't been reviewed for 2 years, delete it. Most outlived their problem long ago, maybe. So therefore, I'm not saying, I'm just being more dramatic here, ki delete it. I'm saying review it. What I mean is review it immediately. So you should have sunset clause for every policy. If there is not refreshed every year or every decided periodic interval, sunset it so that you go back and check it. So sunset every policy. Sunset every policy after a predefined interval or period. Important point. Policies are guardrails. They are not handcuffs. A guardrail keeps you on the road at speed. Handcuffs prevent you from coming out of the parking lot. Most companies install handcuffs and call them governance. It is not governance, it is a handcuff. That's an important point. I have personally worked with so many companies where I feel guardrails have been misunderstood as handcuff. So guardrails keeps you on the road at speed. Handcuffs prevent you from getting out of the parking lot. And therefore, please install governance, please install guardrails and not handcuffs. Okay. So differentiate between guardrails and hand. Four important operating principles. And then comes the hard questions that we need to ask. Now, hard questions are what? First, important point, which comes from our operating principles only. Which policies did not remove this year? How many approvals does a 10,000, 1 lakh rupee decision need and a 1,000 rupee decision need? Do your policies tell people what they can do or what they cannot do? What is that they say? What they can do or what they cannot? Are your policies calibrated to your model velocity or inherited from a different company? I think the fourth question is the first question that you should ask. Are your policies calibrated to your model's velocity or is it inherited from a legacy company? Now you are used to doing XYZ. So, for example, many manufacturing firms, I see starting brands. So, I was a good mineral water supplier or other way around. I was a great supplier, a job worker for Asian Paints. Now, I thought my product is only going into the Asian Paints. Asian Paints won't be Asian Paints without me. Question comes in your head. Why don't I start my own Asian Paints? The moment you do that, you have made the biggest blunder of your life. Why? Because you are now trying to model your organization on a different velocity. Therefore, everything will change. Leadership will change, resources will change, processes will change, policies will change, system might change, but I'm not aware. I am only getting carried away by the kind of success that other brand is getting because of my product going inside this, not realizing it is not the product that sells the brand, it is the brand that sells the product. So you are right in one way, brand exists and not a product. How will brand survive? Correct. But if product exists and no brand, it's a commodity. Or maybe not even that. No, there's no buyer. So buyers are for brands and not product. Therefore, these two things are very different: selling a product and selling a brand. So, are your policies calibrated to your model velocity or model business model or value proposition? Is what you have to ask, or is it inherited from a legacy company? Let's write these questions. Hard questions. The first one being, are your policies designed for your velocity or are they inherited from a legacy or different company? That is the first hard question. Secondly, how often, when was last time you, when was the last time you reviewed your policies? So, hard questions need to be asked internally, explicitly. If those questions are not asked, what happens is you're missing the bus faster than you expect. Policy is an extremely important part and point of our levers. So, what all levers we discussed from last time till this time? Just as a recap, we discussed an important lever of velocity because it becomes your calibration tool. We discussed the lever of leadership. It's a tuning or tone setting. We discussed the lever of resources, what is deployed, works. We discussed the lever of processes today, repeatable systems, and not bureaucracy. And we also discussed the policies, which are helping, telling you what you can do and not what you can. This is the 5 levers that we discussed. I'm going to stop today and we will spend time on an extremely important lever of AI. Next, Darpan, and we'll spend time on that lever. And then at the end of that AI lever, I'm going to put all the levers together and show you how the execution model functions on the why and the how state. Now, these two important points you have to understand. Every organization has a how and a why. The why calibrates the roots, how calibrates the trunks, so that we can create a crown which has fruits and flowers for the world to enjoy. The fruits and flowers for the world to take care. It's a shade that gives to the world so many people. So that's the whole organizational journey. Without a good execution model, like I said in the beginning, it's a machinery without philosophy, is only exhausting thing, and philosophy without machinery is just a velocity without machinery is just sermon. So therefore, if you have to really build something magical, you must have a great balance between why you do and how you do. A great balance between philosophy and machinery. A great balance between the clarity of my head, heart, and spirit, the intellectual quotient, the emotional quotient, and the spiritual quotient, and also a strong levered machine which can build organization moving forward. Okay, great. So I will see you next time when I'll share the screen right now for you, all those who missed it. I'll see you next time with this lever of AI. And if you still have any questions, you can always post us on the connection on the Q&A section over here, and I will try to answer them before for the next Darpan or during the next Darpan. Thanks for being there. I'm sharing the whiteboard for all those who missed it. So first whiteboard was about the process, second was about the policies, and third is the connection of all of them together. All right. Thank you very much. and for being coming here, and see you next time.